My name's Brandon and this is Cartoon Network Video Game History, a show where I take a look back on all of the video games based on Cartoon Network shows and retrospectively review them. OKKO Let's Be Heroes is a show that should have seen way more success. Its premise alone had all the hallmarks to make it the next Adventure Time, regular show, or Steven Universe level success for Cartoon Network, but it never quite got there. Heck, it was developed by a bunch of Steven Universe alumni, including Ian Jones-Quartey, the show's creator. I remember OKKO getting a lot of praise from hardcore animation fans, but for whatever reason it just didn't catch on with general audiences. The show literally had its intro storyboarded by the co-founder of Studio Trigger. Come on guys, how did we let this fail? Looking closely at the show's production is genuinely fascinating. It reveals so much about the show and displays a mindset from Cartoon Network we've never seen before, particularly when it comes to their attitude towards games. The pilot for the show, airing under the name Lakewood Plaza Turbo, first aired in May of 2013. After lots of rumours, speculation, and even hints from Cartoon Network's Chief Content Officer Rob Sorcher, the show would sort of debut as a bunch of web shorts in 2016. Eventually on March 9, 2017, 4 years after the pilot, VP of Games and Digital Products Chris Waldron announced on the PlayStation blog of all things that Cartoon Network was commissioning a season of OKKO and that a game was in development. This is actually kind of huge for Cartoon Network video game history. Particularly in more recent times, it's clear that Cartoon Network have waited to see shows become a smash hit before giving them the video game treatment. But for OKKO, video games were planned as part of the marketing assault from the beginning. Video games were so integral to what OKKO was. Fun fact, a free mobile game called OKKO Lakewood Plaza Turbo was released in February of 2016. The actual OKKO show would premiere on August 1, 2017, almost half a decade after the pilot was shown. Unfortunately, this franchise wasn't long for the world. In August of 2019, Jones-Quartey announced that Cartoon Network would not be renewing it for another season. After 3 seasons and 112 episodes, it was all over. Before the show's untimely death, OKKO Let's Play Heroes would be released to the world, which is what I'm covering today. It came to PS4, Xbox One, and PC on January 23, 2018, despite initially being slated to release around the same time as the show's debut. In November of the same year, a Switch version was released, and the game was eventually bundled with Steven Universe Save the Light. Let's Play Heroes was developed by Capybara Games, who have been around since 2003 and might be the most credible developer to ever work on a Cartoon Network game. Unlike most of the developers used, they aren't a studio who have just been pumping out licensed tie-in games. Since focusing on consoles in 2007, they've released a number of critically acclaimed games. My favourite of these is the incredible Super Time Force, but they've also made stuff like Below and Grindstone. According to Ian Jones-Quartey, Capybara Games had been developing Let's Play Heroes since 2015. Everything about Let's Play Heroes seems like an anomaly for this series. It's been planned well in advance, acclaimed developers are attached to it, and Cartoon Network themselves seem to actually care about it. So, after hearing all that, it's probably unsurprising to see that the game did pretty well with critics. It has a 6.9 average for the PS4 version on Metacritic, received scores of 6s and 7s for the PC and Switch versions, and the Xbox One version was mostly the same, yet sits at a 5.7 average. This is mostly because of 2 reviews of 4.2 and 5.1, but those are massive outliers. Everyone else seems to have enjoyed it. OKKO's development as a whole is fascinating, and this massive focus on gaming is a huge part of it. At the end of my Save the Light review, I hoped we were turning a corner when it comes to Cartoon Network video games, and looking at this, we may actually have. But before I get into my analysis, just hit that subscribe button for the love of God. Samurai Jack Battle Through Time is being released on August 21, and on October 9, Ben 10 Power Trip is coming. If you're not subscribed, you're going to miss out on those 2 mega reviews. But now, let's go be heroes. It's so obvious from the get-go that Let's Play Heroes had an absolute truckload of planning and resources put behind it. When you kick off the game, you're treated to a very lengthy cutscene, and this actually is extremely revealing in more ways than one. The animation is gorgeous here. It was done by Exit Studios 73, and while it actually goes for a different style than the show itself, it still looks gorgeous. It also probably helps that OKKO was specifically designed to not have a specific style. Jones-Quartey has gone on the record many times about how he didn't want to be restricted by overbearing style guides. And as I said, the opening cutscene is lengthy. It's painfully obvious how much effort has gone into the story side of things. As somebody who has never seen an episode of OKKO, the intro serves as the perfect introduction to the world, something that is desperately needed when you're making a game based on such a new show. The writing is also really damn good. It's genuinely one of the funniest games I've played, and there were numerous times I was laughing out loud. Generally, I've found that video games almost never elicit this kind of reaction from me, especially through dialogue. If I'm laughing at a video game, it's usually because I did something wacky, like launch a motorbike off the tallest mountain in GTA 5. Something that majorly helps the writing is the fact that Let's Play Heroes is, to my estimate, like 90% voice acted.
I managed to trick the teens into thinking I'm cool.
Possible, but doubtful.
There are occasionally times where dialogue just appears on the screen without voice acting in the overworld, but almost every time somebody is speaking, they're accompanied by their voice from the show. This is extremely impressive, and again, it just shows how much effort has been put into this game. As is basically the norm for Cartoon Network at this point, Let's Play Heroes has a banger soundtrack too. Even when the games have been god-awful recently, the soundtrack is generally a redeeming factor. Honestly, it's getting to the point where unless I state the soundtrack is awful, it's just best to assume it's incredible. While everything is flashy on the story and technical side of things, that's not the be-all and end-all of a game like this. The gameplay has got to be at a similar level. If you've ever seen a second of OKKO, you can probably imagine what you'll be doing in Let's Play Heroes. Yep, we've got another beat 'em up on our hands. Despite the slight cynical tone in my voice, Let's Play Heroes just continues to surprise and set itself apart. The combat here could seriously be the smoothest combat I have handled in Cartoon Network video game history. God, it helps to have a competent developer at the helm. Like most beat 'em ups though, it does lack a lot of nuance and depth. There's only so much you can draw from the limited combos and moves available. In the end, despite controlling really well, fighting devolves into a bunch of button mashing. It's a gameplay style that you're never penalised for. You'll unlock new combos and moves as you progress, which are handy, but it's not like you have to sit there and learn them in a practice mode. It's pretty shallow, but because it works so well, it's almost enough to completely ignore it. Unfortunately, my enjoyment of the combat took its first major hit when I realised that there are basically 5 enemies in this game. Yeah, later on you face a few drone-type enemies, but these are so few and far between. Your average battle takes place against the same handful of enemies over and over. In particular, the Daryl and Shannon enemies are used a ridiculous amount. I suppose this could be an issue with making a game at the start of a franchise's life. The world hasn't been massively fleshed out, so you run into repetitive issues like this. Arguably the biggest selling point of Let's Play Heroes combat are the power cards. If you're familiar with the show, you'll know these are a big deal in the OKKO world. Basically, all of the heroes in this world have collectible trading cards, which show off how good of a hero they are. The main goal for KO throughout this game is to first obtain his own power card, and then raise his hero level to level 1. These aren't just a neat collectible or story element, as they actually play into the combat. Each hero has their own unique ability, and if you've collected them, you can use them in battles once charged up. It's not as simple as equipping them and away you go though. To utilise these powers, affectionately known as Powie Zowies, you need to do quests for the specific character to unlock it. Sidebar here, I absolutely despise the term Powie Zowie. It makes my skin crawl, and the term is used every 5 seconds here. Using these powers is the little bit of extra spice needed to make the Let's Play Heroes combat just a little more appetizing. You can also use any of the Powie Zowies you've unlocked in battle. You're not forced to equip 1 or 2 at a time, your whole catalogue can be selected whenever you want. This was really neat, even if I did stick to the same 2 power cards for the most part. The Powie Zowies constantly charge up during a battle, but this is slow with a capital S and about 15 O's. Instead, you should be focused on landing hits on enemies to speed it up. In particular, charged attacks seem to add to the meter the quickest. Another neat thing to do with power cards links into the vending machine mechanic used to obtain them. Throughout the game, KO earns money, which can be used to purchase various items, but more importantly, are used at a vending machine to buy packs of cards. Not only is this a nostalgic throwback for me because I loved collecting cards as a kid, but it also ties into another nostalgic memory. If you're a longtime fan or just somebody who has gone back through my old reviews, you might remember that some of the earliest games had tie-ins with the actual show. These generally took the form of watching the latest episode and inputting a code word into the game that was displayed during the broadcast. Well, OKKO has revived this idea. Like 90% of the first 50 odd episodes feature a special code that you can input on the vending machine to get cards. This is the only way to obtain these special cards. While I love the throwback to Cartoon Network games of yesteryear, I could imagine being annoyed upon release. Not all of Season 1's episodes had been released at the time of the game's release, meaning you couldn't realistically obtain all of the power cards at the time. It wasn't until about a month after the game came out that Season 1 finished airing, which meant for about a month it was impossible to get this game's Platinum Trophy. While I like the idea of the power card mechanic, I think it falls a bit flat. Particularly, I think the whole go do side quests to unlock the Powies Owies format is undercooked. Firstly, you have to get these cards via random luck in the first place, while also having the money to purchase them. Then you have to do 3 whole side quests for the person to level them up to the point where the Powies Owie is unlocked. Something I haven't mentioned yet is that OKKO has a day-night system. You literally go to work, clock off for the day, go home, and then a new day starts, complete with a calendar and everything. Due to this mechanic, you can only do one of a specific character's side quests per day. Even if you somehow knew all this info before playing and were trying to maximize how many Powies Owies you had, it's still basically impossible to unlock many of them until way late into the main campaign. I found that I basically only had access to the Powies Owies of Enid, Rad, Mr. Gar, and KO's mother for most of the story, because they're involved in the main story quest and are so easy to level up. The rest of the POW cards basically became irrelevant because of this setup. Once KO reaches the goal of getting his own POW card, you can start leveling up his stats. Leveling up also unlocks new moves and combos. It's pretty simple though, considering strength, agility, and coolness are the only stats. You can purchase stat boosting items that help you level up a specific stat, but how you level up is mostly determined by what you do in battle. Certain moves and combos are tied to different stats. For example, if I perform a lot of charged uppercuts in a battle, I'll level up my agility up way more than any of the other stats. It's kinda cool, but it's another element that's undercooked and it's never explained. You're basically forced to discover how the leveling system works on your own. Leveling up also feels insanely slow once you reach level 3. It took me so long to get from level 3 to 4 in all my stats. I also found it so weird that by the time you reach level 4 in all your stats, all of the moves and combos have been unlocked, yet you keep leveling up. I'm not sure what the level cap is, and there is a trophy for reaching it, but without the incentive of new moves, there's no serious motivation to try to go even further. So that's the actual combat in Let's Play Heroes. For the most part, it's neat, but heavily flawed. There's good ideas, but they're held back by some strange decisions. Weirdly though, the combat gameplay is somehow a relatively minor part of the game. So the structure is kind of weird here. Remember when I mentioned the day-night system going on? Well, the gameplay loop that creates is the catalyst for how strange this game is, and also the cause for so many of the game's issues. In the first 2 hours I was mostly enjoying myself, but had one nagging thought. It really felt like I was doing a whole lot of running back and forth, sitting through dialogue, and watching cutscenes. I was getting bizarre vibes, but chalked it down to Cartoon Network, Capybara Games, and the OKKO crew trying to make a game that matches modern standards. So I was really taken aback when it turned out that the entire game was like this. There is entirely too much story, talking, and cutscenes in this game. I know, right? Weird complaint to have for a Cartoon Network game, but it's just overbearing. I'm not even exaggerating when I say Let's Play Heroes has more cutscenes and dialogue in it than every other Cartoon Network game combined. More often than not, it felt like I was watching a bunch of OKKO episodes rather than playing an OKKO game. This actually kind of works because it made me want to watch the show, but at the same time it backfires. The appeal of an OKKO game is that you get to actually play. You know, the thing literally mentioned in the title of the game. Far too often I was sitting through minutes upon minutes of dialogue. The onslaught of cutscenes and dialogue feels massively self-indulgent, and it also feels like the people involved are covering up the fact that there's not much of a game here. As I mentioned, the gameplay is pretty shallow and gets repetitive quickly despite being smooth to control. It feels like all of this bare-bones story was packed in to extend the game's length and make the gameplay less noticeably repetitive. And while the actual cutscenes are great, much of the dialogue scenes are very low effort. Most of the time when you're having a conversation, you're looking at a static screen with characters using the same canned animations over and over again. I was ready to pull my eyes out if I had to watch KO transform into that big-ass anime head one more time. So not only are you sitting through minutes of dialogue in a row, but you're also just watching static screens with canned animation. It's like the world's worst impersonation of a Hideo Kojima directed game. I think the worst thing about this game's overabundance of dialogue is that there's no real purpose to the story here. You'd be forgiven for thinking there is some grand overarching plot here, but there isn't. You're basically doing minor chores while occasionally the show's villain, Boxmore, does things in the background. It also doesn't help that the climactic boss battle is a major dud. The game ends up feeling meaningless and the pace is just meandering. The best way to describe it is that it feels like a season of a show. You have plenty of days at the plaza that are completely irrelevant to the overarching story, and while that works for a season of a TV show, it doesn't work here. The majority of missions you do in the plaza don't matter in the scheme of things. hence why the game actually allows some flexibility for what order you do them in. Occasionally, Boxmore shows up in a cutscene to progress the plot, but almost nothing you do has an impact on that. And it's not even like the quests you're doing are interesting. Most of the time it's just extremely basic fetch quests where occasionally you have to do one fight. I lost count of how many times I just ran from location to location in this game. It's just a constant loop of starting a mission, talking to this person, getting the thing, and going back to where you started the mission. The plaza is also tiny, so it's not even like exploration plays into it at all. It might sound like I'm exaggerating for laughs, but Let's Play Heroes takes place on like the same 5 screens for the most part. Despite all the planning and effort that has clearly gone into this game, it manages to feel smaller in scope than Battle Crashes or the Ben 10 reboot game. My major dislike for this game always comes back to the day-night system. In the show, KO works for Mr. Gar at the bodega. The game decides to copy this, so every day you literally go to work, and at the end of your shift you get a paycheck that can then be spent on power cards and such. The game is always stuck in the same loop. You arrive at the plaza in the morning, do a quest for Dendy or KO's mum, go to work and do a quest for Mr. Gar or your work colleagues, and then you go home. You do this for like 15 days. It's almost like Let's Play Heroes is a simulator for what life is like under coronavirus restrictions. All you can do is work and go home, and then you repeat that for the rest of your life. All you do in this game is go to Lakewood Plaza, talk to your mum, fight robots, talk to Mr. Gar, fight robots, and go home. And then you wake up and go to Lakewood Plaza, talk to your mum, fight robots, talk to Mr. Gar, fight robots, and go home. And then you wake up, go to Lakewood Plaza, talk to your mum, fight robots, talk to Mr. Gar, fight robots, and go home. And then you wake up, go to Lakewood Plaza, talk to your mum, fight robots, talk to Mr. Gar, fight robots, and go home. And then you wake up, go to Lakewood Plaza, talk to your mum, fight robots, talk to Mr. Gar, fight robots, and go home. By the end of this ordeal, I was so checked out. I couldn't care about doing yet another menial task. It got so bad when things finally heated up with Boxmore at the end, I just didn't care. I really wanted to love this game. It also might sound like I really hate this game after playing it. Instead, the truth lies somewhere in between. OKKO Let's Play Heroes is just a meh game. I think it's insanely boring and repetitive, but it's a stretch to call it a bad game. There are many positives. Combat feels silky smooth, the writing is really funny, and the animation and music are 10 out of 10. But when you get to the actual meat and bones of it all, Let's Play Heroes is an extraordinarily boring game. At the end of the day, it comes across as all style and no substance. It kind of feels like a waste of Capybara's talents. They're so good at making fun gameplay loops, but instead of making this game all about fighting, it's focused on stories and fetch quests. All of the puzzle pieces are here to make an amazing game, but it's like all of the pieces have been jammed together in the wrong way. The end result is a very wonky picture. There are sections that have been put together correctly, and it's obvious that in the correct order it would be beautiful, but the current combination is all wrong. I think the most positive thing I can say to sum up my feelings is that this game made me want to watch the show. I don't know if I've ever said that before. I enjoyed the characters, the premise, and the world, and now I want to go binge a bunch of OKKO. And at the end of the day, isn't that the point of a game like this? You could genuinely make an argument that the whole point of a tie-in game is to sell you on the thing it's tying into. However, with the way this game was planned out by Cartoon Network's executives and Ian Jones-Quartey himself, as well as Capybara being at the helm and developing the game for several years, it feels like Let's Play Heroes should have been more. Instead of being a good marketing tool for the show, it should have been like Marvel's Spider-Man or Batman Arkham, or more realistically, Steven Universe Saved a Light, something that is purely a great game. Next time on Cartoon Network Video Game History, I'll be going back to Adventure Time for one final review of Pirates of the Enchiridion. The Adventure Time game started off superbly, but then quickly fell in a hole. Will the last hurrah for Cartoon Network's flagship show deliver a good game? Make sure you subscribe to find out.